Hey everybody, it's Tuesday night, Ruby Tuesday. Ruby's name, my dog. Gonna stream for a little bit longer here. Streamed earlier today and went out and did some work in the lawn and with my wife and got some stuff moving around at the new house, and then back here to try to get the Swift app looking a little bit better. So off stream, I did a couple quick research things and figured out a couple better ways of doing things here. So one, I thought I'd just, the authentication view hasn't changed at all. I don't know why I even went into that. What kind of changed was the main view here, we're going through and we're creating a list of navigation menu items. So let me go through and explain what I did there. So I made a navigation menu item, okay? It needs to be identifiable and hashable, so that can work in a hash table. And how we do that is the hash function, obviously. And so when you implement this protocol, you have to implement the hash function. For the identifiable, you have to have a unique ID for each one of these. And the ID can be anything as long as it's unique. It just needs to be able to find something, right? That's how you identify it. And we want to use this for a list. When we want to loop through something, we need to make sure that we can loop through it. Hash tables are obviously super fast, and so we're hashing a combination of the ID, which makes it unique, and the name, just in case. We're going to use a UUID for the ID, probably definitely for this, so it's not a big deal. And that should guarantee, I mean, the chances of a unique ID, UUID being like reused is like 1 in a million or a billion or something like that. It's some ridiculous number. It's never going to happen. So we have a navigation menu item that we're going to have these three things. We'll have an image and a string of the name of it, and then obviously a unique ID so that we can find in the list. I modified the navigation service, and so I want an expense report, I want a developer, I want a replication, and I'm going to add another menu item, but we're going to do it based on some other properties later on. So right now we have a list of 3 of these items, and we'll tweak this a little bit as we need to go through it. But you'll see here, we just have a struct of a navigation service, and the service is basically just going to make, this really is a factory when it comes down to it, right? And this would be I probably should rename this factory, to tell you the truth, shouldn't I? Because it really is a factory. And the navigation, the menu items will just give you back a list of menu items. So really it's just like a factory, you just ask it for menu items, and it just gives those back. So that is mostly the factory pattern. If we look at it, we have a UUID, and then we're getting a string version of that. We're putting our name of our menu item and then an image. And these are using the, it's called the symbol fonts from Apple. And so you can download this if you Google SF symbols. I'm using the 5 beta, which came out with the new version of Xcode and this and that. So, but I use that to find icons to use inside my mobile app. I'm super lazy. Those icons work great. So, yep, absolutely. This is the night shift. Gonna try to get a little bit more done. 1 second, I cough here. Let me make sure I want to get this app a little bit further than I got it today. Still shaking off the cobwebs of not using Swift for a long time, and now I feel like I'm finally getting into my swing of things, and so that makes me feel a little bit better. I did make a report earlier. We haven't used that yet, but let's go back to the... so I explained how the navigation menu works. Let's take a look then and how this really is kind of work then. So the app... I'd say we'd start with the app report, just make sure we understand it. So the app report hasn't changed at all. We still have this authentication service. It's going to use Combine. If the user is authenticated, we're going to go to the main view. Otherwise, we're going to go to the authentication view. None of that's changed. That's still a Combine. Everything's great. In the main view, you'll see here that I'm now keeping track of the state of the item that was selected in the navigation menu. That's the first thing that's going to change from the last time I've been here. We also make the navigation service here. So this is going to be the root of our that service. So if we want anybody else to get that service, we'd have to pass it down. But by theory, the main view should own the navigation service. It's going to own navigation. And it's going to do that inside of the navigation split view. And we'll do that inside of the stack layout, the first one on the left. That's what we're going to say is going to be that, our stack layout. And so for that, we're going to have our navigation service, our authentication service, and then we need to keep track of which one was selected for a couple different reasons. Mostly, around being able to pass it so we know which view got selected so we can change and swap those out. If we look here, this is pretty basic. We got a navigation split view. We've got a V stack, a vertical stack. We're making a list of the navigation items. So we're going to go through, just loop through each one of the menu items. We're looking for the ID that to make it so unique. And then we're going to store whatever's selected inside of the selected item here, inside of state. So that's going to give us the ability. It's going to do that for free. We don't have to write any code to do that. It'll just do that for you. And this is a for each loop. So this is for the list. It's going to say for each item in that particular collection of menu items, let's get those. And so all we do is we make a navigation link. I want it to show up with both an icon and I want to show up with the name of it. So I basically just have an H stack or horizontal stack that we're going to do that with. I want a navigation title on the top of this because we want this to look kind of like iOS-ish. I'm really shooting for, now that I think about it, what I really like is this up here. Where we've got, well, this is probably, I'm more shooting for the notes application, where if we bring this open, you'll see here we've got notes going on here. Try to get a very similar feel to this. Obviously, they got card versus list here, but we have a list here, we've got a list here, and we got a list here. So something similar to that. I think the to do also. I like to take design chops from Apple's stuff, right? If you make it look the reminders, that's what it's called. If you do things like what Apple makes them look like, then there's a good chance that people won't be confused when they use your app, right? So that's why I try to make everything look like Apple's if you're going to program on an iPhone. That's the reason why you use Swift. That's the reason why you're using SwiftUI, is really to get those kind of chops in. So looking for something very similar to those two things. And also the mail application, which I don't want to open my email. But I'm actually probably taking the most callouts to that. I have my... Wait, you're not going to be able to see that on the camera. But that's the mail app. Let's see here. You'll see there it's got a bunch of little items in a list. And that's how you navigate to your different mailboxes. That's what we're looking to do with this app. So... we are going to give it a title because that's something that iOS happens. Now, the title is always really big, and that's like I know some people don't like the title being big. We could tweak that if we wanted to, but we're going to just use a stock navigation title for right now. We'll have a button here. We're going to check if they're authenticated. If they're authenticated, right, we're going to go through and say, excuse me, let me step back for a second. This last button here, because this is navigation title, so I should put a break in here so the code's more readable. This is after we have our navigation menu. What's going to happen here, you'll see here that it's already telling me, it's giving me an option to set the list style to, this is a ChatGPT, or this is GitHub Copilot that's actually giving that recommendation there. That popped up here, this is that plugin I installed earlier. So it's saying, hey, maybe you want your list style to be a little bit different. I actually don't know what that does, so I'm going to actually enable that just to see what it does. We'll turn it on and off and see, because I'm a little curious what that does now. And now look, now it's trying to go through and say, maybe you want to make a toolbar. Here, okay, no, okay, we're getting a little control here, Copilot. Let's calm down for a little bit and go through the rest of this UI of what we did this afternoon. We need a button to log off. And so what's going to happen is we're going to make a button. We're going to make it, this is the, according to the internet, at least this is the icon for logging off of something. And if they click on that, the action will be is we're going to set the authentication to false. Now what happens, once again, remember, in the authentication service, what will happen is that this is using Combine. So we're going to be able to send a message. So you can see here, because we have this object will change, this will send a message anytime this field changes. So this is basically a get and setter. This is how we do it in Swift. So you see here, diz set, because that's our setter. We're going to say, hey, this object, this is authenticated, is going to change. Anybody that has a reference to that then will automatically get a message that says, hey, that value's updated. And this is very similar to the iObservable pattern in .NET, if you've done .NET before. And this is an observable object. So behind the scenes, obviously, we're using Event to do those kind of things, but Swift is handling all that for us. So it's a big call out to MVVM, those kind of patterns where we're kind of doing those things. If we go back to main view here, then the last thing we're going to do is we have a custom button style to make the logo button a different color. And that's just a little style that I have right here that just makes the button red, Couchbase colors with white, and then does a little animation if you click on it to make it cutesy. Why not have a little cutesy in our life, right? And then, of course, the last thing we have is we have a 3-panel application. So we have our content view, that's where all of our content's going to go, and then we're going to have our detail view where all of our details going to go. We send in which menu item was selected because then content view's job is to figure out who should draw on the screen. Should it be an expense list that should draw on the screen? Should it be the developer screen? Should it be the replication log screen? It'll be its job. The content view will figure that out for us, right? It'll just take this, whatever was selected in the menu, and do that. So let's launch this real quick and take a look and see where we are with our app. I'm going to replace it because I don't know what that list style did, and I'm kind of curious now. Let's go ahead and log in. We also need to get an icon in this thing because, man, I'm getting sick and tired of typing this username and password in. So we need a way of cheating. I like cheating. Let's see here. I typed it in wrong again. What did I get wrong? Actually, that's right. I just didn't hit the sign in button. All right, so here's what we signed off with this afternoon. We've got an expense report menu. We've got these expense reports, developer replication. We got little icons with them. This is very similar to the Mail app in iOS. And we have the logout button. And then you can click on one of these. Now, I don't want this to show up by default. I want the other one to show up by default. We'll get into that later. Right now, we've got this semi-working, so I'm actually kind of happy. And of course, if I click expense reports, it's going to know that that's expense reports versus the developer versus the replication, right? So we know that we're basically going back and forth between those. And of course, logout is now at the bottom, and that works. So that's cool. What we're going to eventually do is put an icon right here. We'll put a little logo there, and then if you double tap that, we'll make it so it types in the username and password, the default one for you. By doing that, when we're testing, we don't have to think about this all that hard because typing this in over and over again just sucks. It's not fun, to say the least. And I'm a super lazy developer when it comes to that kind of stuff. That's why the Kotlin app I showed you had that little shortcut in it. We want to do something a little bit interesting here. So, right, this does expense report app. Well, we should be able to have like our user profile show up, right? And that's a lot of times, just about every app has got a user profile in it. You know, you got your little picture up in the corner, you can click on it or whatever. However, Apple does it a little bit different. Apple does it where they have this right here now. They have your whole Apple ID, and then you can see all your stuff that you can do and this and that, right? So, I want to kind of make a cell like this, probably, where we'll basically have a picture of the person's name and their user profile. We'll have their name, maybe their email address, and when they click on it, they can get their user profile and they can update different pieces of information. And I think that would be kind of cool. Then we could store that in the database. And we can sync and get information back from that user profile, like what departments is this person in? Because if they're doing an expense report, we have to know which department's going to get billed for this. We need to know who their manager is, right? So that we can go through and we can get our expense report approved. All those things are going to have to be done. So what I think we want to do is we're going to want to add something above this menu right here that basically gives the ability for the user to update their profile. And I think that's how we're going to handle it because I looked in iOS, I looked in the Mail app. I don't know if you're an iPhone user, but it's a pretty similar interface in the Mail app to that. So I feel like if we do this UI like this, we're not all that far-fetched off from where Apple's is with their apps. And that's not a bad thing to happen per se. So let's go ahead and do that. And then we probably can write some stuff with the database, get a user profile back, save one in, and see if we can also, go through and maybe save a picture, which is also possible. So let's take a look at this then. So what probably want to do is make ourselves a view that we can go to, route to, right? Because that's one of the things we'll need to do. So I need a view. We'll call that user profile to start with. So we'll say user profile view. And sometimes I'll call this like user profile editor view. So I know that it's an editor versus just a viewer, but we'll make it so I can view or edit dynamically. It's probably the easiest way to handle this. So we've got it here. We'll call this, let's just delete this and call it user profile to start with, just to make sure we can get navigation working. This shouldn't take that long. Navigation title, user profile. Copilot's really working overtime here. You already told me to use user profile. Why are you telling me a second time here? Are you trying to get like extra credit here for? Yeah, navigation title doesn't exist in a text field. What am I thinking here? We need a stack or something to put it on top of first. All right, so we've got our user profile view. That's going to be when we click on it, when we go to edit our item. Now let's go back to our main view here, and we're going to have to put something above in our VStack. So this is where we'll have to make like what we want that to be. Well, we know that the Apple one had the picture on the left and the text on the right. So we want a H stack for that, right? A horizontal stack. So let's put a horizontal stack in, and we'll get that up and running. And then we know we want a vertical. We'll want an image, and then we'll probably horizontal stack. We'll have an image, and then next to it, we'll need a vertical stack to put the username above it, and then the email address below it. And we'll see what happens with that, right? Now we're gonna cheat a little bit here. Come on, let's bring this down. We don't need to see the compiler warnings because I'm pretty convinced that we can handle that without it. So we probably want an image here, right? So we probably want to use that like a user profile image. So let's go to the here and look for a user image for a stock one. User fill. Ooh, I do like with the circle. I guess the circle is more obvious. User person circle fill. Let's copy the symbol name, and we'll just put that in as image. And I do believe the syntax is image, and then we say system name, and then we give it the name, and that would give us the image. And then next to that, we want a vertical stack, a V stack, right? Because we're gonna put into that V stack then 2 text fields. We're gonna put text, the username, and then or the email address. Or we'll say full name to start out with, and then we need another text field for the email address. And I'll have to remember the modifier for changing the font for, oh, it's already told me. Copilot says font caption. That's exactly right. I was just going to say I don't remember the font modifier for caption versus full. But boy, Copilot, you're working good tonight. This would be title. This is, wow. Okay. I do like its suggestions here. Copilot, you're getting paid to do the things that you're supposed to, not item title. What is this called? Title. Is it item title or title? I'm gonna trust Copilot on this one. Maybe it's okay. Nope. It's not item title. It's wait. What? It should be title, right? It's titled title headline large title. We want just regular title. Why is it mad now? Oh, Xcode beta. Look at that. Just wait for a second, the error goes away. That should get us a placeholder until we get this figured out. Now, let's talk about this for a second. Who knows the username, the email address? Well, that is right now the authentication view, the authentication service. That's the only thing that knows who the user is, right? It's right here. You can see here. Why do I have a hard code? Oh, this is what we're looking for. This is what we check against. All right. So what we're going to want to do is probably store the username so that we can get it back. And since this is already in Combine, we basically can use that to also send a message to anybody that wants to know the username when it changed, because this is already observable, right? So what we want to do probably here is just go through and say var username. Well, yeah, we'll say username for right now equals, we'll just say string, blank string, and did set. And we'll say object will change, and then we'll say send. And that will now tell anybody, let them know. Oh, what is this again? Nope. Control I. Thanks, Nick, for reminding me of that keyboard shortcut. It is Control I to have it reformat. So that will give us the username. So now what we could do is we could just say, if it's correct, authenticate is true, and then we'll set it as self.username equal to username. And that we'll keep a track of that. Because now what we can do is we can bind that to our view here for the email address right here, right? We should always know who's logged in. That we shouldn't need to hard code this. So as long as we have the authentication service, which we have it right here, right? Well, then we know that value. We should be able to just say authentication service dot username, and that should validate that we got the proper username and stuff. Now we'll use that as the key to get the actual user profile of the database. So that's kind of cool. Now I know what some of you are going to say, that's a terrible database design. Why is it a terrible database design? Because what happens if the email address changes? this can happen, right? People get married. And when people get married, sometimes they change their email address. Well, you're saying, if I'm going to make that a key, so that's how I find the user, isn't that a bad idea because the email address can change? Not really, honestly. In the grand scheme of things, most of the time, I've worked in many different companies. When a person changes their email address, most of the time they make an alias. So they can keep their old email address and they just add an alias onto that email address. So they basically have two email addresses then. So because of that, I'm not as concerned about using the username as a key to the database to get the user profile back. So let's go ahead and click the run button here and see whether or not our view even works, right? And the theory would be, we'll put in our user at example.com, and we'll put our password in here of password12. And there we've got something what I was looking for, but not in the same line of apples, right? I'm trying to decide, like, what do I need to do to make this look more like iOS? Is it because of the navigation link? Of course it is. Because this is not a navigation link, it wouldn't have the same styling as a navigation link because I just made it a stack. Let's wrap this around a navigation link and see if that fixes it, right? And so we know that the value will be, I think about this for a second. Well, if we make it wrap it around a navigation link, the advantage is that we can have the styling. And then what we can do is we can give it a destination, if I remember right, and that will allow us to send where we want it to go. So let's try that. Navigation link. And I want to say it's destination. Yeah. So destination is what's the, let me look at the API for this navigation. Where is the Apple docs in this navigation link? There they are. Let me get the docs open for this so we can take a look at this real quick. This is navigation link docs. Let's see what the docs say. They say basically a label, and then we need, well, that's a, okay, so that's the, this is the view that we're gonna call up, and this is the label we want for it. Aha. Along with a icon if you want. Well, we want this to be custom, so we don't want a label. We want to be a custom view in there. It must take a custom view, right? It must take a custom view. Let's try that. So it looks like we just, in the navigation link itself, we just pass in the place we want it to go. And that'll be the user profile. All right, that's good enough for me to try out. Let's try that and see what happens here. So we're going to say, instead of destination, according to Apple's docs, you don't even have to do that. We just have to say this. Wait, let me go back to the docs, make sure I got that syntax right. They're saying, and then label, I think we can make a custom view here. Does label take in a couple, let's see here. Link to a destination view. You can navigate by initializing destination view you provided in destination closure. So let's see here. Following navigation stack, color detail. Oh, that's right. We would want to, we need to navigate to the content view for this. I didn't think about that for a second. So for color self, can we set it to where we want it to go? Yeah, why can't we? We should be able to say, let's try this. All right, I think I have an idea of how to do this. So I think what we need to do is go navigation menu item, and we'd have to add another navigation menu item into here. Oh no, we, trying to decide if I should use the navigation menu item because then I can pull it back out. Content view is going to know that, so we need to know that. So let's do that. Let's but poop, we're also looping through that. We'll just make a new navigation item. That's what we're going to do to solve this. All right, so navigation item we need to make here. So we're just going to make a private var. No, private let. We're going to say user profile menu item equals a navigation menu item, and we're going to say ID. It's going to be a UU ID to string. Nope. String value? What is this? UU ID string. User profile. And then the icon image will be the same one that we had perfect here. Alright. And then now what we can say instead is that we want, wait, why is this mad now? Missing, oh, do I have to tell it the field name? I do, don't I? And then icon. There we go. What's it mad about now? Missing parameter. Oh, navigation link's mad because it doesn't know where to go. Okay, well, we can fix that real quick. We want to say in here that this would if this gets selected, we don't need to navigate crap. We really don't need to navigate link at all. What we need to do is just say if somebody clicks on anywhere in there, to set the item selected equal to this one, because that's how we then tell content view where to go. So really, we don't even need a navigation link here. All we need is a fake button, right? We make this a big button, and we say action. Let's try this. And we'll say selection equals user profile menu item. And then we need to close this out, and then we want to say that the button's actually equal to all this stuff. And that should wrap the whole entire thing into a button. I'm not sure how this is going to look. Maybe Canvas will run. Let's look at Canvas instead of having to wait to build. See if this is actually what I'm looking for. And we probably could just kind of hack this along the way just to get something up and running. Ha! Xcode crashing again. Oh man, this is what happens when you run beta, folks. I am running the beta because we wanted to play with the Vision Pro stuff. And so the Xcode canvas, this is the previewer that allows you to see your view, your UI before you. I accidentally turned on the assistant. I don't need the assistant. Canvas allows you to see your UI before you compile, so you don't have to build so often. And it's also a designer. You can drag stuff into it and stuff. It's not bad, but obviously it's very unstable in the beta here, so pretty much not usable. I should probably eventually follow a bug report for that, because I can complain about it on a stream, but if Apple doesn't actually get a bug report, I'm not really helping things. So that is not what we wanted at all, right? Oh boy, look at that. How did we go wrong here? Split view. Is the button accidentally getting put into... So that's a horizontal stack that's happening. That's not what we wanted. Although that's working, this is not the UI we're looking for at all. This is the wrong UI. Let's see here. So we put the button inside of the navigation split view. We kind of need it in there though, because if we don't put the button in there, wait. For each one of the items, we make an H stack, and we sort through them, and then we add a button down here for that. Do we wrap this whole entire thing in a... I thought the split view was already... Hey, glad I can catch you on the stream. How you doing? I'm doing great, Mono. Thanks for asking. Trying to get the... I thought split view... I thought the sidebar was a V stack out of the box. Trying to get the UI to look right on this SwiftUI app I'm working on right now. And so I added a button up here for the user profile. What we're trying to emulate a little bit here is Apple's option here in the system menu, where you basically get like a sidebar. You can click on your profile, you go to another screen where you can edit your profile if you want. a combination of that and the mail settings. That's what I'm looking to try to do here. So kind of a hybrid between the two. And so just trying to get that working. I've got a list that goes through my menu items. That's working right. But when I added a button to this, for some reason, it really screwed up my entire stack. It made it a horizontal stack instead of a... Wait, that's why. I'm missing a bracket. I bet you that's it right there. Nope, that closed the split view. So that's closing... Is this closing the split view? That's closing the V stack. So that's a V stack for the button. But this is the button itself. Oh, that's the action for the button. Never mind. That's right. So this would be the button's properties of what it draws. So that's right. So let's stop this and try again. I mean, back in the old days of iOS, if you put too many UI containers together, it would get performance. Oh yeah, you do, man. Yeah, please start streaming. It's awesome watching people, learning from other people how they develop. I truly believe that that's like why I watch Twitch developers, is because I'm always looking for, not necessarily like, sometimes I don't learn like a new coding thing, but how people think. That's awesome. Everybody thinks a little bit different, and they solve problems a little bit different. And watching people think through a problem and solve it, that to me is fascinating. And I get great enjoyment in that. A lot of times I learn like something new, like, oh, if I would have just thought about doing it that way, I would have saved a bunch of time. And I didn't even think about debugging it that way, you know. I've been doing this for about 28 years, and I can tell you that there's not a single day I don't run into a junior that teaches me something new. Because honestly, I'm in leadership right now, so I don't write code every day. So, you know, they're in the code every day. Whoever's in the code every day, they're going to be the people that have all the answers. They're going to be the people that show you new stuff. And so I think getting on streams, working through problems and stuff, it keeps you sharp. It's going to keep you out there. It's also great for the resume, right? Any developer, if I have to pick between two developers, one that's streaming, doing cool things, one that doesn't, I'd be like, yeah, I'm probably going to pick that person that streams because they really care about this stuff. They really want to be a developer. I want the person that has that passion. I think I'm going to wrap this. I feel like this is wrong, but I think I'm going to wrap this in another VStack. And I think that that's going to fix the UI. And I think we're probably going to have to put a to-do item in here to say why. You know, there's got to be a better way of doing this. This feels wrong. And so I'll put a comment up here that this probably feels wrong. Let's see here. And maybe it won't even let me. No, it will. Let me put a this VStack feels wrong. Probably a better way of doing this. And anytime I do a comment like this, I always put a to-do. And that way I can search for the word to do in my code, and I can say, hey, you know, here's all the to-dos I have to go fix. Kind of a good placeholder for you. I think this is probably going to fix it. But like I said, in UIKit, let me tell you, never stack this many views together. If you stack this many views together, you're probably asking yourself for a nightmare for performance. Depending on what you're, you know, obviously you're running on. But really, now that I think about it, most iPhones, like even the SEs running a super fast processor, probably not going to notice it. Probably not going to notice it. This is in Android land. I keep forgetting that in Android land, every view costs you something. And in iOS land, well, son of a poop, it still did the same thing. Even though I said this is to be a VStack, the minute I put the button in, it totally screws up everything. Is it because it's not in the navigation link? No, because I have this button right here that does the log off. And that's working just fine. Wait a minute. Doesn't a list view have a header? I think a list view has a header, doesn't it? Can I just throw this in the header of it? And table view, UI table view. I'm a UI kit guy. Okay, everybody on the stream, let me start out by saying, did UI kit for like over 10 years. So I know collection view and UI table view really, really well. SwiftUI, I've only built a couple apps in it, so I always have to struggle to try to remember how to do things and how to compare between the two. The good news is that it's completely transferable. If you know SwiftUI, you can learn UI kit. It's not hard. there's a couple things with like table sources and stuff you have to learn, but that pattern's really easy. And once you learn it, it's pretty much a cakewalk. In SwiftUI, you just have to figure out like, what is that skill I learned? How does that translate over? And that's how I usually figure out anything. Like Jetpack Compose, when I learned that, I try to figure out like, how does that work compared to what I know inside of React? Because I knew React at the time and I knew they were functional programming. So it's like, this is like kind of like React. So how can I relate these? Something that I know to learn this thing and figure it out. And this, most of the time in SwiftUI, I try to like figure out like, oh, okay, what's the equivalent to what I would do in UIKit? And that usually gets me along pretty well. So what's happening here is I added a button to the top, and the minute I added a button to the top of my navigation split view, and this would be the sidebar. And let me just double check the docs again for this, because maybe I am just forgetting to wrap this. Let's take a look at, I think I have these open in Google a little bit here. Let's go into the split view to see here. Nope, so they say split view, the very first thing you get is this is your sidebar on a 3. Then you have your content, and then you have your detail. So that's the API according to Apple for split view. This in here should be the sidebar, right? This is the thing that we keep talking about. If I go to notes, that's this over here. And you obviously can see that in sidebars, you can have more than just a list there. You can have multiple. You can have a little button down here, right? This is new folder. So there's nothing wrong with adding things to a sidebar. You can even see, like I said earlier, in the system settings, they have a total different thing right here, right? A totally different cell here. I think what we're probably looking to do, now that I think about it, all right, I've got a new idea how to solve this. Oh, if you have Swiftlet. I think I write a bunch of to-do. It says to-do stuff and Mark says warning on compile, which is nice if you have Swiftlet. I am going to set up Swiftlet. I do have the actually links open, I think, down here in my bookmarks for both for format and, oh, I guess I don't have them here. Where do I have them? I must have them on another screen. Yeah, I have them right here. I totally agree with you on that, and that's really solid advice. I usually recommend both Swift format and SwiftLint. And let me just get, where the heck is the SwiftLint link here? What I normally do also is I actually follow, I usually follow the Airbnb rules for SwiftLint and Swift format. And so these will give you both a SwiftLint and a format file. And Airbnb's rules are really solid. And then you can just kind of tweak them, right? You'll go in and you can make, maybe delete a couple rules or add a couple rules. But man, I'll put this in chat real quick here. If you're looking for like just to get yourself up running with Swift format and Swift Lint, the Airbnb stuff is really solid. It's a good place to get started. And obviously Swift format, Apple makes that. So that will format your code. A little different than a linter. This will basically force your code anytime. You could do it during build usually. It'll re-indent your code. And that way if you cut and paste some stuff from somewhere, it'll guarantee that the format's always going to look awesome. Yeah, I like the Airbnb stuff. They make, what the hell is the animation framework that they make now called? I can never remember the name of this, but it's pretty much like the stock standard of animation. If you want to do like some animation stuff in iOS or Android, what the heck is Airbnb's animation framework called? Airbnb animation. What is it? Lottie. Duh. So Airbnb are the people behind Lottie. And if you want to do animation, obviously SwiftUI's got just a crap ton of animation built into it, right? But honestly, Lottie is the ability to just go grab some files and it will just do any kind of animation you could think of. And the biggest thing I like about Lottie is that there's just a open source framework of like thousands upon thousands of animations. You don't have to think about this. Also, you could just you can go get a designer to you tell them, hey, I need an animation in Lottie format, and they'll give you like a XML file or whatever that file is, and then you just basically call it in your code, and the animation's there, and it's pixel perfect. So it's kind of like SVGs in some sense, but for animation. That's the best way I can describe it. Airbnb does that, and they give this away free. And I'm telling you right now, I've had so many loading screens in enterprise applications that they get a Lottie animation, and I just throw it in, and it just loads up. Back in the old days, UIKit, you couldn't run a GIF inside of the loading screen, but you could load a image. And so I would use Lottie to basically get a little spinner going. So when you're calling your REST API to figure out what the heck's going on for your onboarding process, the user's just, not sitting there going, well, geez, this app's taking like 10 seconds to launch. What the hell's going on here? It used to be a quick hack, to say the least. So this is what I'm thinking we need to do here, folks. I think I need to put the menu inside of the actual menu service. And then what I could do is I can say if the menu item, when we're looping through it, I can say if it is of type of user profile, then I'll throw a different UI for it. And I think that's going to solve the problem. And I don't think, I'm just so positive that's going to solve the problem. That's probably going to make my code a lot cleaner because I don't have to use the button then. So we're going to steal the code that we have from the main view here to do that. So if we look here, we've made a navigation item right here. So we can just basically cut this out, add this to our navigation menu service. This is why I do like services, because services make it super easy to do this kind of stuff. And then what we'll do is we want this to be at the top. So let's put this as the first item in the list so it always gets first, because order will be perfect, be very important here. And by theory, that should be hopefully the first item in the list. And then what we could do inside of, let's get rid of grow button. We don't need that anymore. Profile view, we'll get back to you in a second. Let's go back to main view here. Now we can get rid of some of this hacky code here, and instead, we still want this H stack. So we'll need this right here. This code right here, I think this is the end of that V stack right here. Yep, we're gonna cut this out. And then we're gonna get rid of this V stack here because we don't need this anymore. And then we're gonna get rid of one of these brackets we don't need. It's really mad at me. Xcode, don't be angry. Don't go away mad. Just go away. Come on, man. Let's be cool about this. Let's see here. So right here for each menu item. So we're gonna say if menu item dot name equals user profile. I know this is a magic string. We probably shouldn't hardcode strings in. Then we want to do this, and then else we'll do this. Actually, wrong spot. Let's go back out. That was wrong. We need to do it here. We want to say menu item here. We want to say if menu item dot name equals user profile. I've been writing JavaScript too long. I almost put 3 equals there. Don't kids. Friends don't let friends write in JavaScript. Let's just be honest. It's messy. It's messy. Stay with Swift if you can. If you're gonna have to do web stuff, do TypeScript. TypeScript's not bad. Let's see here. So it's mad at me because I definitely probably have some squiggly brackets here out of order here. Let's see here. That's going to be the list. That's a navigation stack. Then we have the button. The button's going to clear where we have too many. That should fix it. All right. Shit. It didn't fix it. Where did we screw up? Let's start with doing my favorite new keyboard shortcut, thanks to a couple of folks in chat. Compile Swift, thank you again for teaching me the code shortcut to basically get this thing to reformat. That was a couple nights ago. I think we did that Sunday night. Let's see here, list view. So this list view is right? That's the list view. And then this is the button. So let's find out where the button ends. The button doesn't end there. Button ends here. This will be the end of the stack for the split view. So we have an extra. How do we get still another extra one? We can't have this many extras, can we? And then detail should be up here. That should close detail. Environment should be here, and this would end our strut, right? That should fix it. Expected value out. Oh, yeah, we don't need that anymore. Let's get rid of that. And then what we need to say here, if we do this, then that code we copied should go here instead. That should give us what we want. We're probably gonna have to tweak this because the navigation menu item, the navigation link is gonna have the chevron, and I don't want, I don't like the chevron. Not for user, well, shit. I bet you we want it. Oh, what's it complaining about now? Let's find out what's going on here. It says we're still missing a squiggly bracket somewhere. Boy, the case of finding squiggly brackets. Let's see, who is this owned to? That's owned to. Highlight here. I think we need to start closing some of these to figure out where the hell it ends. Let's close this. All right. We're missing one because we closed the view right here over there. People that the haters of Xcode don't understand the power of Xcode. I don't know what to say. I get so many people that say, "Oh, Xcode is a terrible idea." I'm like, is it? I mean, honestly, it's animation for cold folding is really cool. Come on. Oh, does it really? Wait, what? I always use the folding trick. I gotta check this now. Holy crap on a cracker. You gotta be shitting me. That. It's been 0 days since I learned that you can just double click on the squiggly bracket. It takes you exactly where the matching one is. That's a game changer. All right. I need to make... Somebody needs to make a video of like the top 10 Xcode tricks. Like, you know, just the things that... I can confirm I'm an Xcode hater. Thanks, Mono. Hey, one, it's on a... Let's give Xcode some credit. This is a beta right now, so some of the stuff it's doing, it's not its fault per se. I forgot to put a comment in here, so of course it's mad about that. Xcode isn't as bad as the haters want to make it. I've used far worse. Let me tell you, there's this thing called Eclipse, and if you're a Java developer, you have to use that. I'm so sorry. It is a pile of turd. Android Studio is pretty great with rainbow brackets. I do have it right here, and the new UI is pretty great in it also. You can see here's rainbow brackets and running. This is the same application, but I wrote it in Kotlin, and we're basically trying to emulate this a little bit with a iOS UI, right? Because Android has a totally different way of thinking about things than iOS, and so we don't want to make it to look like the Android app. Oh yes, I know, right? Eclipse is like, you know, you have some street cred when you're like, you can have those war stories that talk about like Eclipse, like, you know, totally killing your code base. Like I used to do, like in 2004, 2006, I did some JBoss stuff for a hospital, and we had to use Eclipse. And one, slowest turd. It's the slowest thing you ever use. I could type faster than the cursor catching up to me. And it wasn't the work laptop. The work laptop, even back then, actually it was a desktop. But the desktop I had was pretty badass awesome. I mean, it was a pretty decent machine for that day and age. It just Eclipse is ridiculously slow. It's terrible. Don't use Eclipse. I guess now they're making a VS Code clone. That's my understanding what Eclipse is doing now. They gave up on their ID, and they're basically taking like the VS Code code base and making a custom version. Okay, sure, Eclipse. Try to stay relevant. Sorry, I'm going to make a lot of fun of them. It's my God-given right, based on just the years I've had to play with that piece of turd. Let's see if this is going to work now. So now we should be able to log in, and hopefully we see ourselves there, and then we'll probably want to take a look at all the Eclipse package variations. Oh, I know. Oh, good lord. It's terrible. I think JetBrains won that war. I don't think any Java developers seriously use it. This is closer to what I'm looking for. This is actually very close to what I'm looking for, right? Man, I'd like it to be in a separate table. I'm not sure how to do that yet, but I kind of want it in a separate table. But I'll live with this. Honestly, if this is what we're going to get, totally livable in the UI. I don't want to spend a huge more time on this because we should probably try to get some other cool things done first, and we could spend days trying to make this UI perfect. I think this is enough to like move on to the next part of the app, and then we can come back and I always say try to ship something, right? Try to get something usable to a user to ship it, and then go back and add the extra loving care to the UI. Go through and do your animations and stuff, but get a core basic thing done so that you can get it out to people to test it to make sure it works right. Go give it to your buddies and say, hey, can you go download my code and try it out and see if it works on your phone, that kind of thing. And then while they're testing that stuff, you can put all the animations, all the sweet sauce on it. JetBrains can light text. Yeah. Yes, I totally agree. I use the Vim key bindings. And so I'm used to kind of the VI thing because I'm super old. I started in the 90s on Solaris writing C++ and C. And so we didn't have IDEs back then. All we had was VI, the text editor, Vim. And so I got so used to writing. I know the first 7 years of my life were pretty bad. As I look at it now, nowadays it's like, holy crap, I can't believe that we have all these IDEs that do all these things for us. Hand rolling your own make files was not fun. I don't recommend it. But I also thought Object-C was pretty great because it was just C with objects. So I was one of the few people that when iOS first came out, I was like, Object-C is great. I mean, what? This is C. I already know C. This is the perfect language for me to write mobile apps. And that's how I got into mobile, was literally the iPhone came out and I knew C. And Apple announced that was Object-C for the language. I was like, okay, sign me up. How do I write these apps? I went and got a book from, I think it's called Big Nerd Ranch in Atlanta. A guy that used to work at Apple named Aaron Hillgrass, I think his name is. He started that company, and they wrote a bunch of old books for making iOS applications, and they were like the Bible for a very long period of time. Great company. He was a great guy. I've met him once. He's got a beard. Same book, yeah, absolutely. Compulsive, yeah. Super famous book, was really great. I've learned everything about iOS development from that, and to this day, still call it out. It's somewhere in a box. When I moved from Atlanta here, I packed it away, and I haven't boxed all my book boxes yet, but it's somewhere in a box out in the storage building, that book. It's really great. So I think we have a good enough UI here to move on to like trying to figure out something else that we could do. So one, we have navigation working, but it's not working. We're not telling. Let's get instrument out of here for right now. We'll instrument a little bit. You know what? I do want to check one more thing out. Now that we're in here and stuff. Most people know how to do this. You guys are all pros here, so in chat. So you guys probably don't need me to lecture you on how to do cool things in Xcode. You guys are teaching me stuff all the time, so that's good. That's one of the reasons I stream, is to learn. One of the things that you could do, and in UI Kit this is probably far more important, explode out your view to understand like the performance of it. This is the view hierarchy. And this is usually when you're trying to figure out your render performance, you're trying to figure out like how many containers is my crap in. And this is super awesome. And usually you can get your content view, your wireframes, but it will literally tell you every single container that's currently running. And this, like the 3D view, which I don't remember. Oh, here we go. We exploded out. That is the 3D view of what we're currently rendering right now. And you can then count how many containers are basically being rendered. Hillgrass, yeah, Aaron Hillgrass. This is really important when you're trying to figure out performance. If you've got somebody that... we wrote some code that would dynamically draw the UI based on like some data we'd send it. So it was like basically dynamically code generating the UI. Anytime you get yourself into that world, your code generation UI stuff could literally be broken pretty bad. And a lot of times then you have to debug, go into this view and say, geez, why do I have like 5 views inside of this thing? That's probably too many. That's probably why scrolling's not working with a crap. In the old days of like iOS 7 and 8, we had this big card we were making, and we had graphs that would go in it, these circles that would animate. And we couldn't get them to scroll right. The performance was terrible. So what we actually did was we turned them into what they call groups of cells. So we took one cell, one card, and made it into 4 different rows. And we did grouping, they call it, inside of UI table view. And I grouped those cells together so they look like they're stitched together as one card. But really, when you reuse cells, it was basically... register 4 different types of cells because we have 4 different types of things we're drawing, and it fixed our scrolling. And that was kind of like auto code generation that we had wrote a bunch of stuff for that for. But the only way to figure that out was I actually went into this when it first came out, and I exploded out the view, and I went, wait a minute. Oh, no, that's not good. Why do we have so many views inside of views? And this is because back in the old days, we had something called constraints, and we'd have to connect our constraints up. And it was basically the code we had generated to create views so that we could constraint things to a certain part of the screen. You know, we wanted equal space in between 3 different animation circles that were kind of saying the percentage complete. And we need to keep the space in between those. So we put a box, we put 6 boxes. We make the equal spacing of the boxes between the boxes. And this gave us like this unified UI. But the problem was we were putting so many boxes on the screen, scrolling was just getting killed. in SwiftUI, I don't think this is used that much. I've to tell you the truth, I haven't seen a single streamer, a single person talking about like performance rendering and stuff going on when they're debugging. I've seen some people use the profilers. I think these back in the old days they call it Shark, but the modern profilers, I see some people using that on streams, but I don't see a lot of people really debugging like, why is my UI kind of not rendering, scrolling fast and slow, per se. So I think we have our UI to the point where I'm pretty happy with it. From a performance standpoint, I mean, we've got a solid amount of views. I mean, it's not huge amount of code, and this is actually pretty reasonably readable. So I think this is something that we could probably ship and move on. So what I want to do, I'm trying to decide here. So we should probably make sure navigation works so that we can edit a user profile. So ship it now, exactly, Mono. We should probably check it in just in case my computer dies, and then I have to try to rewrite all this, and I'd be really pissed. Commit often, folks. Put a draft PR out and just like, commit often into the draft, and any tech lead will tell you, hey, if it's a draft PR, I'm not going to look at it until you fully commit it and stuff. That's my rule of thumb, because I've literally had a monitor die on me, 2 monitors in the last week. Computers ain't as stable as they used to be. Everything seems to be cheap these days. All right, so we're getting sent into the content view and the detail view what menu item was selected. And so this is where we're going to have to do some switch magic. And what we're going to want to do is say, what view should we render based on what the heck the selection is? And so usually this is done with a switch statement, right? So we have a switch. Oh, look at Copilot. Wait, let's see if Copilot will write this for us. Switch. So we've got the Copilot, and you'll see here, I'm going to say accept that. And then let's see here. And then I'll say, hey, look at this. Look at this, guys. I'm going to accept that. That seems pretty good. Let's see if it does the next case for me. Look at this. The AI is writing code for me. I'm enjoying this. That is wrong. Wait, why is it mad here? Let's figure out what's going on here. Why is it mad? Switch must be exhaustive. Yes, we must have all the options in the switch statement. Totally agree with you on that. Oh, let's get rid of the text here to start out with. And we got how many items in our navigation menu item? Our navigation service. What do we got here? We've got 4. We've got user profile, expense report, developer, replication. So we need developer and replication in order to say that we've got this done right. Go back to content view. Case. Let's go developer. And we want developer view. Still used to that semicolon. Can't get it trained out of it from all the semicolon languages I write in. And then let's just copy these 3 lines. Oop, 3, right, paste. And then the last one is replication. I should probably make an enum for the names, right? I get that. That's probably the better way to do this, but let's see if we can get by with strings for right now. Case label can only appear inside of a switch statement. What the hell is it saying here? Label only can appear inside of a switch statement. What is this thing talking of? Oh! Boy. Okay, that's that. It's getting late here. And it's saying that we're missing, and I accidentally deleted one too many of those. Can't conform to view. Switch must be exhaustive. Yeah, fix. Oh. And let's say, let's have this go to, let's do this. To yank. Piece this over here, say this, and then this. I think this is legal. It's legal in most languages, so I have to make the assumption it's legal in these. any case that you have basically that you stack on top of each other should be able to go through, and then usually have a break. Oh, are you not going to allow me to do this? Is it a comma? Comma, some. I know some languages do it this way. Is that the answer? Maybe it's comma. I don't know many others. Let's see here. If I may ask, how do you rate Compose Swift comparatively? Does it stand out better, or do you like much the same quirks? Mono, that's a really good question. Literal value. 1 second. Let me see what's going on here. Just removing it. No, I don't want to. I want to move this. Why would I want to remove that? That's the right code. So this goes. Oh, I'm missing this here. That'll fix it. All right, here we go. Do I like Jetpack Compose more than SwiftUI? That's a pretty good question. I think that's what you're asking. There's things I like about each one of them differently. Up until Swift 5.9, that's what I thought. So you're saying that I don't need the comma. I can just do. Can I just do this? Why is it saying literal value? No, I think I need a comma. I think I can do this. I think that's gonna work. Because I think that's a chain, right? Let me compile, see if it works. It does. I'm getting a warning about literal value. I'm a personal person that hates warnings. I think warnings are probably you're doing something wrong. I don't know what the hell that means, though. The question, though, in chat, let me answer that before we move on here. Let's see what somebody's complaining about here and see if we can get it. Case. I think we could do a default. That's the answer, because we'll just say everything else. If this handles default, we don't need all the rest of these. We'll just say case default. So we just say default and then do it like that. And then we'll just say, hey, anything that isn't this, go to report viewer. I think that's what we want to do. Why is it bad now? Expected after case. That's got a case. That's got a one. That's one. That's got one. This is all right. Why are you freaking out? Sorry, case A, B. Oh, it's just default. Don't put the word case in front of it. Thank you. Do I like Jetpack Compose more than SwiftUI? The answer is I like different parts of them. If you would have asked me 2 years ago, I would have said Jetpack Compose. I like the concept better, because Jetpack Compose makes it really easy to just put Jetpack Compose and embed it in your existing Android application without changing a lot of plumbing. I can just basically swap out a small amount of the code. I can mix and match basically old Android views with Jetpack Compose really easily. They've made it kind of that. They also have like patterns that I really kind of like. They have good guidance on how to write code. Let's just put it that way. We know that everything should have a modifier on it. You should be passing modifiers down. And they have a thing about passing the buck up and down the rendering tree. And as long as you understand how all that works, Jetpack Compose, when you read Google's docs at least, it's pretty solid. It's not bad. It had some problems when it first released, but I'd say in the last year it's gotten pretty darn stable. And I would say that I would replace an entire application, an enterprise application, one would rewrite it just to rewrite it, but adding all new stuff into Jetpack Compose is relatively easy. Swift has been up until they had navigate. So the very first couple versions of SwiftUI were kind of terrible from a navigation standpoint, right? And everybody that I had read, and anytime I used it, I always end up using navigation controllers, and I would then basically turn a SwiftUI into a view controller and just basically still use navigation, the old style with navigation controllers. It was super easy. I knew how to pop them off the stack, all those kind of things. It would just work. And I'd still have the love of SwiftUI. I think that in the latest version, SwiftUI has gotten a lot better. Things like like passing state around is a pain in the ass, no matter how you do this, right? The new environmental object option in Swift 5.9 and SwiftUI, the latest version, that's pretty badass awesome, right? You can set an environment variable, and then anybody that's on the stack, as long as you pass the environment property down, it can view that thing, and you don't have to pass it in the properties anymore. That's pretty great. I think that's giving you kind of like a singleton approach to doing things. I think that syntax is a better syntax sugar than some of the other things I've seen people try to do. I think SwiftUI makes it so you don't have to use things like RX Swift. And so I think there's some definitely things I like about SwiftUI. There's still things that I feel like you can hack together on Android and Jetpack Compose are just easier. Like I could just do an if statement in Jetpack Compose and just set some value inside of a compose function, a composable function. You can do things that you shouldn't probably do, but you can do it, right? And obviously they warn you, hey, that's going to impact performance. You probably shouldn't do that. And you're right, you probably shouldn't, but you can. In Swift, it's far more, it's like the bowling alley when they put the bumpers out for kids. They put the bumpers out for you so that you don't get the ball in the gutter by accident. Apple has put a lot of gutters out to make SwiftUI as easy to use as possible for new people. But it's also, the flip side is that it feels like it's a little bit undone compared to UIKit. It still feels like there's just certain things that are just kind of like missing that don't work great in it. And I feel like that's getting better, though. Like I said, with navigation now, navigation is pretty great in SwiftUI. It's gotten to the point where it's understandable and it actually works enough where I'm writing this app completely in SwiftUI and I don't believe I need UIKit at all. We'll just put it that way. From a Jetpack Compose standpoint, would I write an entire app in Jetpack Compose? I've done it. I've had to make a lot of sins to get it to work. Certain things with text formatting really suck in Jetpack Compose. Oh, good Lord. Trying to figure out like how to put a currency in and try to get decimal points exact right. And the other thing that really sucks, I'm going to get on don't let me get on the tree here too long of ranting. But come on. Android, get date time figured out because it is shit over there. It is the worst thing ever. If you have to deal with any kind of date time code, there's the calendar object. And then there's certain versions of Java that you could use the Java code. And then Kotlin has something with date time, but it's totally not compatible with those other things. And then you have some stuff in Android that still uses the old stuff versus the new stuff. Date time, if you have to use it in Android, it is like the end of your life. You are literally going to waste times and days trying to figure out like how to calculate this and how to serialize it. It's just terrible experience for date time. Over here, we used to have NS date, but now we've just got date time, and it's just fine. The Swift stuff is great. So I feel like Swift does it really easy for doing things like currency, for date time. These are all the things that developers hate to have to figure out. Is like, how do I do currency? How do I guarantee I can round up and down dollar values and stuff, right? All those kind of things. I feel like Swift and SwiftUI has a little leg up in text formatting and those kind of things. I feel like Apple has really figured that out well. And I think in Jetpack Compose, a lot of times you end up hacking something together to try to get it working. That's my personal feeling on it. I think they're great, both of them. And I think that if you know SwiftUI, you can learn Jetpack Compose pretty quickly with Kotlin. And I think the vice versa is true. If you're a Kotlin developer and you know Compose, you can absolutely jump into Swift and learn SwiftUI pretty great. The one thing I really miss over here, though, is the nullable typing, where we basically can say, sorry guys, I'm going to go into a little, actually I don't even have to try to show you this. I have code I can show you this inside of Android Studio here. Let me show you the biggest thing I think that I like from a Kotlin syntax that I just think is one of the coolest things, and it makes my life super super easy. So I'm going to go into one of my view models because I know this is where a lot of this magic happens. So in the UI here, let's go into our view models. And so I like in Android, I usually put my stuff into features folders, and then it's just the easier way to doing it. But one of the things I love is this syntax right here. So what this does is this says, if this is not null, then let this equal to this variable. And this syntax, now we had if let guard in SwiftUI, right? So in Swift, we have a syntax very similar to this, but this particular syntax, I absolutely love in Kotlin. And I wish every language did this syntax because because once you learn this pattern, you start writing in this. This is just .let, $.let is like the coolest syntax ever. You get used to it. Once you get used to this pattern of how to write things, you will never have null errors. You'll write some of the sweetest code ever. It is just really, really great. In Android, we have to worry about things like the dispatcher UI, right? We have to make sure we're running on the right thread and stuff. All that kind of stuff is not all that tricky to figure out, though. They have pretty good docs on this. And the answer is, just remember, most people don't realize that network and disk access is I/O. Okay, CPU is threading and that kind of stuff is for processing intensive things. They're two different things. And so most people think that threading is needed for everything. It's like, that's not true. Remember, we want to optimize for IO if you're talking to the file system. And then or you're talking to the network. That's IO. That's input output. If you're trying to calculate like a million records, that's when you want to get a bunch of threads spin up and do that kind of work. Or use coroutines, right? That's the real answer of how to do it in Kotlin. But this is where I think a lot of developers get hung up of understanding, like, over in like Java and C# land, the .NET people out there, they think that they're like async is the answer to everything. That's not true. Async is great for certain types of patterns, but not for everything. And that's the number one thing that people get wrong, if you ask me. They don't understand that there's a time and day that you need async, but then async is not really a true answer to everything. And sometimes you need threading, and sometimes you need IO, and you need whatever's optimized for IO in that language. You may have to go look up the docs and figure out like what is the most best way to do this. So I just think the problem is that everybody gets used to this one syntax, and they think that that's the only way to do things, and they think that that's the answer to everything. It's like the messiah answer to all problems, and it's just that's not the case in software development. You're going to find that you're going to run into all kinds of different problems if you make that assumption. I feel like the Android documentation does that really well, though. They've got pretty great documentation that explains how to do things, and if you're willing to spend the time looking it up in the documentation, you're probably going to find a pretty good answer for just about anything that they have. So let's take a look here. So we should see user profile here. That's 100% right. We should see that that's the expense detail view. That's wrong, but we'll fix it. That's the developer view, and that's right. And this should go to replication. All this is right. This should actually take us not to the detail view, but to the reports view. So that's me. I did that wrong. Because in here, when I say expense reports, this should be the reports view, not the expense report view. This is what shows all the reports. And that naming probably needs to get changed because I already confused myself with the naming, right? And the answer is, if you confuse yourself, you're going to confuse every other developer that looks at this code. Because let's just be honest, right? You're going to be that developer that 2 years in the future, you're going to have to go look at this code again and try to figure out what you did. And if your syntax sucks for you, it's going to suck for not only you now, but you in the future. You should probably make sure that you don't have those kind of problems in your code. So I say fix problems now so that future Aaron doesn't have to deal with all kinds of headaches and problems and hate your life at 2 o'clock in the morning when someone's calling you because they need this damn thing out by tomorrow and it's a holiday. I've been down that road before. I could tell so many stories about, I think it was Labor Day, or no, Memorial Day 2015. I just shipped we had an app that shipped 2 weeks prior to it, and then nobody figured out there was a bug into it until literally the Friday before Memorial Day. And so then my boss calls. He's like, dude, you have to have this fixed before people get back to work on Tuesday. They're gonna freak out if they find out. And then it's like, I'm looking at this code going, oh Jesus, oh man, we should have wrote way better comments, because I hadn't looked at the code in quite a while. I was a tech lead by then, and I was responsible for 5 or 6 apps. So I'm looking at this code going, Jesus, what were we thinking? Why are these variables named like this? And then I'm going back, emailing people. Nobody's answering me on the weekend, right? I'm emailing all the other people that worked on it. Nobody's answering. So I'm like, I'm gonna have to figure this out myself. I had to write a big diagram and flow it out, because the mobile app had like 53 views, I think, in it. It was ridiculously large, and it was the problem. It turns out the entire time the problem wasn't even the mobile app; it was the API that was busted. But it took me a better part of the weekend to figure out that it wasn't the mobile app. The mobile app was just fine. The REST API was broken. That's working. So all of our navigation's working. So we could checkbox off that we got navigation for the most part kind of figured out from that standpoint. Flat. Oh yeah, yeah. Man, Flash code. I didn't think people use Flash. Oh, please don't tell me that sounds terrible. I'm so sorry. I know Flash was cool back in the day. What the hell is their script language? I don't remember what that was called, but I remember there were people that were experts at it and did it pretty well. All right, let's see here. Let's talk about databases. I think I want to get that user profile stored in a database somehow, but a couple different ways we could do databases here. And only 4 years ago. Wow. Yeah, didn't Flash die way before that, though? Yeah, never be able to escape history. Exactly. Didn't Steve Jobs say on the stage in 2009 that Flash was dead because HTML5 was around? And I remember everyone booed him, and now look, HTML5 is like the standard. Steve Jobs said it like when the first iPhone came out. He was like, all you need is this, and everyone's like, you're stupid, blah blah blah. And now we are 12 years of everyone's going, oh, HTML5 is the greatest thing ever. It's like, didn't that dude say that a long time ago? And everyone thought he was really dumb when he said it. He was ahead of his time. Don't get me wrong, Steve Jobs, my understanding, major jerk. Really treated people like trash, but super smart guy. Had a really good vision, and so that's just how it always goes. So I think what we want to do is play a little bit with getting a database up and running. Now, databases is my expertise area in mobile development. Been doing databases for many years. I've done all kinds of stuff. We've written our own. Turns out we've done a lot of caching solutions to try to get the app to keep going fast because REST APIs are slow. My opinion on databases is I think REST APIs suck. I think they're terrible. I hate having to use frameworks to try to figure out if the network's available or not. So reachability, all those kind of things. All that code just makes me want to barf. When I found out that you could just do mobile databases and just get away from all that, and it automatically replicates information up to a server, and I don't have to write any code to do that, I was like, okay, yeah, that's what I really want to do. That seems like it's way easier on me, the mobile developer, so I can just focus on making this mobile UI look great, and I don't have to be thinking about all this network socket code and all this HTTP code to figure out whether or not these damn REST APIs work or not. I take an offline first approach to mobile development because I've a little history on me. I have been primarily a enterprise developer. I've only shipped probably 4 or 5 things to the App Store, but I've shipped literally dozens upon dozens of enterprise applications, more enterprise applications than you probably want to know about. A lot of enterprise apps, usually they have something called MDM, mobile device management. So usually companies have their own internal app stores. And so I worked at Ernst & Young, EY, they're a big accounting firm, like the second largest in the world. And we had our own app store. And we had all of our enterprise applications only in our app store. And so we would ship to that. And originally it was on a product called Citrix, Zen Mobile. And then we moved over to Microsoft Intune, which is this other app store that you can have in your company. And I know that Apple's try to kill MDM and try to get it so everybody ships to the App Store. I know MDM providers are just garbage. They're the worst. You have to wrap your app in it, and it's all kinds of BS. I could start cussing really quickly here if I start talking about MDM too long, because it's so painful. If you say, Aaron, I've never had to do that, I'd say, you know what? You are awesome. Don't ever have to, because it's terrible. If you have to do it, you're just not going to like your life. It's just not fun. I can't have anything positive I could say about MDM platforms on anything I've ever used. I've never used a stinking one of them that is any word of good. They're all just garbage. So I guess that means I don't like them. But I've shipped a lot of applications to that, and that is a different mentality mindset that you kind of have to have for enterprise. It's a little bit different than shipping out to the App Store. Usually there's a lot more people looking at your code and critiquing it. You usually have to go to a change board to get approval to update your app. Things like time zone. It's just all these kind of bullshit things that they do to try to protect corporate data. Don't get me wrong. If you're a company and you need that stuff, that's great. But you could do that on the App Store without needing to go through the roles of having an MDM provider. Let's just be honest. Now, how we normally do databases, in enterprise development, a lot of times you're trying to develop for offline first. One of the famous applications I wrote, I'm not under NDA anymore, I can kind of describe to you what this did, was an inventory application that this big, because they're an accounting firm, they would go to these big warehouses, massively large. We're talking Amazon level warehouses, and they'd go check the inventory of stock items. Well, the problem is that you get an end user, they'd tell them, hey, you need to download the inventory app on your phone, and then you need to have it on your phone before you get to the warehouse. You need to launch it at least once so that your profile's set up. And so it knows what engagements that you're going to actually go and do. It knows what warehouse you're even going to. None of them would do that. they get to the warehouse, and of course they don't have internet at the warehouse. It's some kind of Wi-Fi that's protected, and they're never going to get the password for it because Amazon's not going to give them their password to their Wi-Fi, because you can get on their network and steal stuff or whatever the hell it is, right? And their guest network never works right. So now they're sitting in the warehouse, no Wi-Fi whatsoever, no ability for internet because the building's too thick, LTE doesn't work with the shit in there, and now they're just pissed off because the mobile app doesn't work. That's the world I used to have to live in. And so we had to write a bunch of crap that do offline first. It was really complicated, and a lot of our apps were like that. A lot of our apps were just like, they get to a client's place, they're in a building, the internet service sucks, and they still need to use this damn mobile app for something. And it's like, for the love of God. So I have, throughout the years of enterprise development, had to make myself offline first. And the good news about Couchbase Lite, at least, is that it's technically speaking whatever you want it to be. It could be online or offline first. It just doesn't really care. It's like, hey, I'll start out with a database, and you only get what's in the database. You could pre-build a database and actually have it cached in the app, so when the app starts, you have some values that you yourself started with, and then the minute that it can talk to the server, it'll just replicate down whatever the hell's in the database that you tell it to replicate down. It's kind of like you can have your cake and eat it a little bit, right? So usually how I'll do it is I'll make an offline database. I'll make we call it like a starter database usually, and that database will get you kind of up and running. Think about it like an expense report. Let's go through like what we're going to try to build, right? Departments don't change very often in the company. The HR department's always going to be called HR. So really, since those values don't change very often, you could throw those in a database, and you could just have those values in the database. You can pull them out. If there's a new department that gets added in a new department code, you could just on first replication grab that and update the item. That's pretty easy, right? And as long as you use document keys, that's pretty easy to see the change differences. Expense codes. If you've done an expense report, work at any company, the expense codes only change once a year because it's a booking thing. It's how they do their books. Most companies have to report off to some government for taxes. And so they ain't going to change their expense codes very often because of the fact that then they have to change all their accounting books. I know this. I used to work for an accounting firm. So this is another example where you could embed in all the codes that are currently noted for the current year. And then when the app gets online, then you can go download them and see if there's any new expense codes. But most of the time, that database could just be embedded into the app with those codes inside of it, and you don't even have to hit the REST API. Now the actual expense report is usable out of the box. They don't even have to be online. They can launch it first time and say, hey, as long as I can authenticate you in, I've already got the expense codes and stuff. Make an expense report. Go for it, man. I've got enough information to get us by. And then the minute you get online, I can pull the rest of the information down and give you a better experience. It turns out I've written an expense report a couple times now for enterprise companies. So I usually write example apps of stuff that I already know how to write, that I've written before. So I already know like the workflow of like the problems to solve because I'm a lazy developer, right? And if I'm going to write example code, here's the whole thing. If you're trying to learn like SwiftUI, don't try to learn how to write some kind of new workflow that you don't understand, because you're trying to learn the syntax of SwiftUI, not the workflow of the application itself. So anytime I try to learn something new or try to refresh myself on something, I always pick an app that I know how to build, like an inventory app or a expense report app or a storefront app. The things I've built so many times in my career that I can build them in my sleep, because then I can just focus on like, what's the SwiftUI syntax for this? I'm spending a lot less time thinking about workflow, a lot more time thinking about like the thing I'm trying to learn. That's a recommendation on learning, like when you want to learn how to do development here. So I think what we're going to do here is we're going to play around with making a database manager. Now, this gets into some really complicated, we could go back and forth on this, and I mean, if anybody wants to debate this, I'm more than happy to have a talk with you anytime on this. Patterns, right? Developers get lost in patterns, and I keep telling people patterns are only needed to better your chance of having repeatability success. That's the point of a pattern. If you use the factory pattern, you're guaranteed it's going to operate. As long as you understand that pattern, you write with that pattern, you understand that the code's going to act a certain way. That's a goal of a pattern, right? And a lot of people get lost in this. Like the old version of UIKit that used MVC, Model Control Viewer, that's really popular. Some people like MVVM these days, Model View Controller, Model View Model. And that was a big Microsoft thing that they did when they brought out something called WPF back in 2008. I was part of the beta for that, and it was kind of a mess, to tell you the truth. But in the world of databases, there's a pattern. There's a couple different patterns out there that are really popular. The Android folks have kind of settled on the repository pattern. The .NET people have kind of settled on the repository pattern. I think the repository pattern is pretty good. I think the repository patterns good enough for I'm going to use it in iOS. And I know that some people are like, iOS. Look, folks, it doesn't really matter. As long as you understand how the code works, that's what really matters. So don't get tied up in that there's only one way to do something and that this pattern is the only pattern to do something. Let your team pick that. If you're on a team of people, let your team say, this is the way that we're going to do things, and then follow that team. And live and die with the team. Don't be the outliner in that. Repository pattern's pretty nice. It's a pretty easy way to get by with things. What we're going to do, I think, is we're going to make a data folder here, and we're going to start with, we're lazy. We don't want to do work. And when I say that to UI, the UI is like, hey, I only know how to do UI. Hands off, I'll do anything else. We're going to make a database manager. And we're gonna have the database manager manage all the database crap. We don't really want to deal with the database from the UI standpoint ever. Separation from this means that we can test this, so this is kind of nice. So we're going to do the following. We'll have a database manager. It will manage the database crap. Then we'll have repositories that when you need to get a certain set of data, they know how to get that particular type of data. A user profile, for example. Don't know how the user profile repository will say, I know how to get users. I don't know how to do anything else. I just know how to do that. And if we do this right, technically speaking, if you have a user profile repository and you have two versions, you could literally have one with a protocol that goes to a mobile database, and another one that uses REST APIs, and you could swap in between it. As long as you keep the contract of your protocol the same, you can swap in and out all you want. And so this is a good pattern to get yourself into, because now, technically speaking, if you don't want to be on Couchbase Lite or SQLite or whatever it is, you want to move to a different platform, you just replace out the implementation with something else. As long as the contracts are the same, none of your UI code has to change. Technically speaking, your database manager wouldn't have to change either, as long as it uses a protocol. This is where using protocols, I know a lot of people say don't use interfaces unless you need them. This is the times where if you use them and you do it right, you actually can save yourself a bunch of time if you're not married to one piece of technology. If you're saying, hey, I'm going to try SQLite today, but I may want to move to Firebase tomorrow, or I want to move to Couchbase Lite, well then protocol that, right? Because that's going to just save you a bunch of time from swapping that code out. It's going to just make your life easier. So we're going to need Couchbase Lite here. I mean, that's given, right? Because I work for Couchbase. If I didn't put some Couchbase Lite in it, I wouldn't lose my job, but they'd probably be like, why are you doing this? And you can see here, Copilot thinks I should use SQLite. Here's the cool thing about Couchbase Lite. I'll give you some inside scoop. The storage engine is SQLite. That's the secret sauce, is that we are, technically speaking, the data that is stored in a, even though we're a document database, we are technically speaking SQLite. And you'll see here, look at this. It's already like, Copilot is like ready to write me some code here. You know what? I'm kind of curious of what it's going to write. So let me just see what it's going to do. We'll see how far it gets right, because the AI is now writing this. I didn't write any of this. So this would give me the ability to do this as a singleton, right? We have a static let shared. And so we're going to say, hey, let's make a singleton out of this. That's a really good idea. You should only have one pointer in memory to your database. That's solid. So far, Copilot, I'm going to give you one as a score out of, we'll see how many. Let database equals database. That's going to give us a pointer to the database on disk. The database name, expense report, that name's usually pretty long. I probably wouldn't do that. I would probably just do, I don't like to use special characters. I don't like to use dash or underscores, because all kinds of chaos can happen between Unix file names and et cetera, right? And escape characters and all that kind of crap. I don't like to get into escape characters. Don't put spaces, all that kind of stuff. I'll just do it all one word like this, all lowercase. My chances of conflict are very low here. Our try statement, this is actually a pretty solid way of doing it. Let's see here. And then it's basically doing a save expense. See, this is a repository's job. This is not my job at all. Although this is using key value pairs to do this. That's actually a pretty solid way of doing it. If we go to get, those two things aren't wrong, but we don't really care about that so much. That's not our job. That's the repository's job. So let's actually take all that code out. But this code's actually pretty solid. I would say that it's not necessarily wrong. Let's get the database up and running first, and then we'll look at replication, because that's honestly the hardest part, just getting the database working and stuff. The replicator is pretty easy to get set up, honestly. It's a very small amount of code. The thing I'm worried about is, well, we don't have to worry about tokens yet because we're not going to do replication yet, so I don't have to worry about tokens. Technically speaking, should I do a private for the database? Usually, I'm trying to think here. What's the disadvantage of doing this? So one, we do need a DNIT. This is very important in the world of databases. We have to have a do and try. And we have to say self in Swift database dot. We don't know if it's null or not. We need to say close. This probably needs to be nullable because we can't guarantee that the database is going to open. It's a try here, right? But we're not guaranteed that that's going to work. We need to close the database. What we're going to do if we catch? We'll put some to-do logging here. We could do an NSLog there, something like that, right? To basically log out that this didn't work out right for us, if that happens. But usually the very first thing I do when I do a database is I say, hey, I'm going to open and I'm going to close. And I'm going to guarantee that we have a DNIT, so if this thing goes out of memory, we don't. What's going to happen is your database could possibly get corrupt, right? If things go wrong, well, you're not using anymore, close it, because you just don't know what's going to happen on the iPhone. It doesn't happen very often, but the answer is close. And if the app goes in the background, unless you're going to do replication in the background, which you have some problems in iOS, you only have about 10 minutes to run background processes. And, usually I don't think it's, unless if the app needs it, it's not really worth it. My recommendation is just turn off replication, close the database. When the app comes back alive, then turn it back on, and the replicator will, within seconds, get your data back, unless there's like a million records, which usually never happens in an app. Running in the background is super hard and dangerous, and don't listen to people on Stack Overflow that say, well, just run an MP3 that has 0 volume in the background. Then you can run forever because Apple allows audio to run in the background forever. Don't do those kind of hacks. I literally had a team once that turned in some code that did that. That's how they were trying to get around it. I'm like, this is the worst hack in the world. What happens if they start playing iTunes? Because back then Apple Music didn't exist. I'm like, oh, so they're going to open iTunes and now your app doesn't work in the background anymore? Boy, that's a genius idea. No, it wasn't a genius idea. I'm being sarcastic. It was a terrible idea. Don't do that shit. That's a terrible way of doing things. So let's see here. We have a database. We have a pointer to the database. I think that's enough to get the database person up here. We should probably put that in a folder though called data so that we can just group all this stuff together. Let's just put a data folder in here. I won't tell you the architect's name because maybe you'll run into him someday, but there's an architect that came up with this master plan, and I made it my goal in life to make sure that anything that he tried to put into production I would look at, because I was starting to be afraid for the company, because I was like, this guy's got nothing but bad ideas. I probably should make sure that he's not trying to, every app was just like had all these hacks in it. It became a pain in my butt because I was a tech lead for all mobile at EY. So at some point in time, all the apps had to come past my desk, and I'd have to go through and review them and then tell people, yeah, you ain't going to production today. Sorry. You got to fix all these problems because this is not maintainable. And most of the time what happens is EY would ship an app, and then they would take the team, they'd put them on something else, and then they'd hire contractors to maintenance it. And so my problem is I have to make sure that not only the app can ship, but these contractors can continue to update it. And of course, they're going to probably ship that offshore to some other country where the development cost is cheaper. That's just how the cookie crumbles at an accounting firm. You're trying to keep track of all that. So we're going to do our user profile repository. We're going to follow the rules repository of, we won't put a protocol in until we need it. This probably needs a protocol, but we'll start with just a class to see if we can get by with it. But I think the long-term answer is we should probably use a protocol for that so we can swap it out and do some testing on it and stuff. Some hacks, yes, in mobile especially, because for years now, Apple's not been very kind to doing things like background processing, because they always cater to the user, right? And the user is like, hey, I don't want my battery draining on my phone. And iPhones have been not necessarily, until recently, great on batteries. Now they're pretty awesome on batteries, but Go back to the iPhones 6, 7, and 8. They weren't the greatest batteries, especially when they went to the big phones and like the 6S and the 6. Those things were battery drainers. Even though they have bigger batteries, they still you weren't getting a full day on the battery on those things. So running tasks in the background wasn't a great idea. All right, so we got a database user profile repository. We need to get a pointer to that database, so we're just going to say it should be a singleton. So because it's a singleton, I should be able to say database manager. Let's see if we can see our database. Shared database. Yep, so anytime we want to use our database, we have a pointer to it there. This is pretty cool. So now what we should be able to do is we need to make a user profile object that we can basically, well, in the world of examples, should we do a user profile object or should we do that key pair? I gotta think about this from a work standpoint. I need to show both off, and I can just show serialization and everything else. But if I don't have at least one of these damn things that shows off using key pair values, I'm probably gonna get that's probably not gonna go well for me. If that was the case, I'm trying to think through the process here of what we would need. We need to know the document type. That's something we definitely need to know. So we'd have some kind of private property for that. So we'd say like let, I think the old school way in Object-C, if I remember right, we always use K for private properties. And I think now the modern way is underscore chat. Yeah, Mono, I know, right? The hacks are just terrible. In Swift, is it more popular to use the K versus the underscore for, I should get a linter installed, and linter would tell me this. I'm gonna Google this real quick, versus K for private properties. I don't know the answer to this. Is underscore the new hotness, or is it still K? It looks like, at least in Quarter Stack Overflow, the opinions are varied. That's not shocking. I use underscore everywhere else. We'll just use underscore here. We always change it if we need to. So we're going to say document type equals user profile. Let's make it always user. Writing in too much JavaScript and TypeScript lately. Got the semicolon disease. Got to get back into Kotlin and Swift to get off this disease. So that's going to tell me that I know that the document type is going to be this. I don't know why it said that. Copilot's not necessarily. Let's ooh. We haven't used our AI overlords in a while here. We should go back to our AI thing and see if we can get AI to write this for us. That's a good point. Generate a user profile repository that returns a set of user profile properties using Couchbase Lite as the mobile database. Include the following fields. We're going to say email. We need first name, last name. We're going to need a department as an array, but we'll get to that. Department as an array of strings. We'll need a job title. We'll get to manager a little bit later on because it's an embedded object, and that I want to probably key value. That's not all that hard to do either, but you'd have to dip into it. That syntax will look kind of, yeah, we probably should do that actually. As an embedded object, that's a good idea. We'll do manager after. We'll just try to get to generate some simple code, and then we'll worry about complicated code after that. Let's see here. We need a modified date that tells us when the user profile is last modified. Although in Couchbase Lite, there is metadata that will tell you like the revision number of a document, so you'll know like whether or not it's been updated and stuff. So you don't necessarily have to worry about all that much. And most of that stuff you do on the server out in the cloud. You just tell the server, hey, handle revision conflicts for me. You write some JavaScript code and it does it for you. On the mobile app, you never really usually worry about this. You can write code to do it if you need to, but usually I recommend handling that in the server because your mobile client, you don't want to bog down with all that kind of stuff, right? If you're doing a heavy transaction app, though, that you're doing like thousands of transactions, like an IoT app, for example, if you have some kind of sensor, you're trying to do like, you're collecting the temperature every second, you may have to do some revision checking on the client itself because you're just doing too many records. And in cloud, you're never going to get that synced up. You may have to do it on the client, but most of the time on mobile, you can let the cloud handle revision checking and conflict resolution and save yourself a little processing on the mobile app. The end user won't know the difference because either way, it's going to sync back down the revision, right, once it's updated. So let's see if ChatGPT can just do this. I'm trying to think if there's any other properties. We'll start with something simple. We'll see, ChatGPT, could you write me a user pro in Swift that uses this? So let's see here. So it didn't know we had a database manager, so of course it's writing all the code for databases. It also thinks we need a query, but we don't. I should have told it we need to use key pair. Let's see what it's doing here. So get the user profile. It's using this is wrong. This is actually using query builder. This is the bad way to do it. Not the bad way. Okay, there's nothing wrong with query builder. If you need to query a database and you don't know the key to a document or key to a record in the database, then you have to query. In this example, the key for the user profile will be the email address. Because of that, we already know it. So because of this, we don't need this at all. In fact, all we should have to do is pass in the user, and we should be able to use key value to get the document back. This is let's ask it to update. Please update the get user profile method function and use the document. Use the user ID as the key, the document ID, and use key value to return the data. We'll see if it knows what that means. So that is actually right. Returning no is not necessarily the greatest way to handle this, though. You could just basically make a blank dictionary, right, to return back. Usually the reason why I do that is because I'm super lazy and I want to use this for the form for creating a new user profile. So if I just make a blank one and send it back and the only key I set is the email address, for example, well then now I can just send them to the screen and they always are going to have the dictionary that they need, and it won't be nil, and I don't have to worry about like all the nil checks and stuff. This is pretty close to where what we need here. This is definitely the right code for a document, but I would not recommend this as the code that you would use to get that. So, but we could salvage this a little bit here. We could probably try to converse it a little bit, but I think this is probably as far as we're going to get from the usefulness of ChatGPT in this. So we have a function here. We'll just grab this because this looks like a good place to get started. And I think we'll try to get this done. And then let's see here. It's almost 11 my time. We'll probably go for maybe another 20 minutes or so. Then we'll call it a night. Let's see here. So the first thing is I don't want to throw a nil. I don't want to throw anything. I want to just return. I don't want to deal with exceptions and stuff. That seems like it's just a pain in the butt here. So let's think about this for a second. So what we're going to want to do is we want to return a dictionary. A set to our dictionary. So we can do this, but we're not going to throw anything. Oh, we need to throw because the document, the guard. I want to say that does Couchbase Lite still throw an exception on this? Let me see. I think it throws an exception, document not found. Let me see here 1 second. Well, we don't need the nullable there, but let me check this. Let me get the docs open. I'm pretty sure that we throw a document not found, Couchbase Lite, Swift, database, get document. And let's see here. We don't care about the data. What we care about is getting a document. That's a mutable document, but we want to get one. Here we go. Nope, that is... Wait. That's for dates. Oh, yeah, that's right, because we're using Couchbase Lite 3.1. We have to use collections now. So it's a collection. Where's the getting started here? Let's see here. Getting started build. I think I just want to go directly to the API and take a look at this real quick. Collection. Let's go to get document and see what the get the document does. Document by ID. Okay, so it throws an NS error if it could open the database. If the collection is deleted or the database is closed, and it returns a nullable document. So we're going to have to deal with the nullables. All right, well, that told us that. Let's see here. So ChatGPT has only been updated since I think I just read now it's September of 2021. Is that right? Chat update ChatGPT 4 last update model date. What was it? Not just the release date of it. I'm pretty sure the data that's an update to it, but I don't remember when the models were trained. I'm pretty sure that the models were trained in like 2022 data, because I know for a fact it doesn't know about like the latest version of Swift, because the models obviously they built to generate the models. I want to say it's well, let's ask ChatGPT when it was updated. Chat, what version of Swift do you, what is the latest version of Swift that you know about? September 2021 is the last time it was updated. So Swift 5.5 is what it knows about. We're on Swift 5.9. So that's one thing about AI you have to watch out for. This thing doesn't know anything about Swift 5.7, 5.8, or 5.9. 5.7, 5.9 are probably the two most popular, right next to 5.5. So that's the one thing about using AI to generate your code. Just remember, this thing is not up to date on the latest coding practices. So anything you're getting is not necessarily guaranteed to be great. And that's what's happening here, because we don't use database anymore. We use collection. But we would have to, so one, we have to know about that. So we have to, let's do our database manager to get our default collection. So let's say, equal. And since we're going to do this just with default collections, we're going to say if database collection, and we need to do underscore default. That's something that you just, that's some inside baseball. That's the default collection for Couchbase. Oh, we need to do a try on that, right? So we need to say, I'm getting cocky here. So let's see. Actually, should we do a if This will probably work. I was trying to think, should we do a if guard on this and kind of do that? But this is our init method. We're probably fine with this. If the database doesn't open it, it's just going to make a new one. That's how Catch by Lite usually works. So if it goes in the file system, it says, hey, is there a database here? Oh, there's not a database here. Okay, I'll make a new one. And then each database, no matter what, always comes with a collection and a scope name underscore default. So if I ask for a collection name underscore default, it's just going to go find that collection name. We could also store the scope if we wanted to. So we could say scope and take that to scope and do it like that. And then we could just say this should work. Scope equals try database scope. We could say default. And then what we should do is get the collection from the scope. That's the proper way to do it. And if I'm training a user on how to do this. Wait, what are we saying here? What's it missing? Oh, it needs the name property. What's it meant about now? Nope, I added name. That should work. So we should be getting the documents out of the collection. Think of it like a file drawer. All right. So if I have a database, I got my file drawer. And this is the old file cabinet. Like if you go to an old school office, they have the big file cabinets, right? The database is a file cabinet. The scope is the drawer. And when you open up the drawer and you pull a folder out of it, that's the collection. And inside of that folder is a bunch of pieces of paper. Those are documents. That's how the database stores information. So if you can think of that analogy in your head, you can handle just about any database. In SQL Server and other products, this is usually called something called schema. So usually you'll have a database name, you'll have a schema, and then you have the table name, and then the data is stored inside of that table. But if you've ever seen a file folder, file cabinet, and you think about that analogy, it works really well for that. It also works really well for multidimensional arrays. The file cabinet, I learned that in high school back in the 90s, and that was like the math teacher that taught us computer science taught us that. And I've used the example ever since like 8th grade when I learned how to program. And it's been pretty solid since. So I think that's a good analogy to have. So what we want to do in the profile here now is instead of getting it from the document, we're going to get it from the collection. So we're going to say database.shared database. Let's just make a link to the collection here because we're going to need it in multiple methods. So we'll say let collection underscore collection equal database manager dot shared dot collection. And now we don't have to keep the pointer to it anymore. We have a pointer here. I get that adds another reference pointer to it, and that's not necessarily a good idea sometimes, but this should be fine. Let's see here. And so now we should be able to say document. What's it? Reject. Let me see what Swift says to do here. That's not helping. Copilot does not know what it's doing here. Let me get back to the Couchbase Slide documentation. So I want, in collection, I want to get a document by ID, it's called. So document ID, and we give it a string. So Copilot nor ChatGPT understand the new API because this just shipped about a month ago. And that's why I'm literally doing the streaming on this now, is to get myself familiar with the new API for work. And obviously, if I can do some stuff with work, but also have some fun streaming, that's you're double winning on that, right? So we see here that should get us a document. Oh yeah, we don't want this. So we want to say here, let's start with a let response or data equal equal, and what we're going to do is we're going to say, ooh, that's actually kind of right. Let's accept that, but we're going to delete a bunch of stuff here. We're going to say ID I'm going to say user ID. And we'll want to do another thing there to save ourselves some headache and time here. Wait. No, we're just going to do an update field, so that's actually fine. Let's make this... Oh, shit. We do have to make it any because we can't guarantee the data is going to be date, time, and stuff, so let's make it any. That's going to make our life a little bit easier. We'll have to deal with the any on the other side, but by theory, what should happen is... Why is it mad now? Let's see what the first error is. Oh, yeah, it could be no. That makes sense, right? It's a nullable. What's it matter about now? Get there, but not mark with try. Oh, come on. Oh, wait. I've got this backwards, folks. Boy, it's getting late here. What's the line in Avengers? It's getting late when Scarlet Witch says the Incredible Hulk. I don't remember what the line is, but it's starting to feel like that. Let's see here. The immutable data was never used. Consider replacing without removing it. No, it actually is used because we're returning it here. Do I have this backwards or do I have this right? Let me read this again. Guard let document equals try. Oh, this should be if. Duh. Is it if guard? I'm so used to Kotlin here. So Kotlin, I could just write variable name dollar or question mark period, and I'd be done with this syntax. In Swift, it's what is the syntax for this? I think it's guard if, right? If let document. Then we'd have this. It would say return document, else return that. I think that's the right syntax. Yay, Kotlin, exactly. Hey, man. I'm going to say I've written a lot of Kotlin in the last 2 years, to be honest with you. And I am definitely written a lot more of that lately than I have Swift. And that's why I'm struggling a little bit here to remember the difference between the syntaxes. If may only expression return or throw as a source. Cannot convert void to bool. That usually means I'm doing it wrong. Let me go look at our documentation. That's probably going to have a better example of this. Because of my rusty Swift. Let's see here, scope of collections. Let's go and get a document. This should give us... Try collection. No, we don't want to create indexes. Not yet. We just want to get a document out of it. Let try... They're saying to just do a let on it instead of a guard. I have looked at Kotlin multi-platform. We don't work with it right now, which is most of the time why I don't deal with it a lot. We've got some... There's a community person out there that's actually working on it. An open source person, one of our users that's actually working on it. Let's just do this for right now. Let document... Is the syntax else then? Else. Is this what I'm doing wrong? It's somewhat coming back to me now. Document dot. Document dot. I think this is the right syntax. Document to dictionary. And that should be the end of that function. That should be, cannot return if when if it's using expression. Time for me to crash. All right, Pal Swift, man. Hey, yeah, thanks, man. Definitely. I'll be back online on Thursday. We'll be doing... I try to do 2 streams on Tuesdays and Thursdays. One for the people over in Europe and India, and then one at night for the East and West Coast U.S. people. And that way I'm covering kind of both bases. So I try to do 4 hours in streaming on Tuesday and Thursdays. And then Sunday night, I do a grab bag for all. Who knows what I'm doing on a Sunday night? It's wherever I feel like. I might play a video game. I might code. It's whatever I feel like. So I'll definitely be back. I'm going to watch a bunch of people also. So, man, make sure you're posting in Discord if you guys are going online, because I want to jump on your guys' streams, too, when I have time to go through and see what you guys are doing, how you guys are doing it, because I'm always curious and learning. I think I have this just about fixed, but I appreciate you for stopping by. So the only thing I'd say now is I'm not dealing with the error. And I think I could just be rude and use the exclamation point. It's just like .NET where you could just be rude. Oh, yeah, we have to do return here. I think you could do the exclamation point and get past the... it should post on the dev Discord. All right, perfect. I will be watching. I usually keep Discord open anyways because we have a Discord at work. And so that's how we usually talk with like clients and stuff. And so I usually keep it open and try to watch streams while I'm coding at work, or most of the time doing PR reviews, right? We're probably all getting to that age now where a lot of us are just running teams and trying to do PRs. This should work though. So this should be able to go through and get a user profile. It should return. Right now it's not going to return anything because of the fact that we don't have a document in the database yet. So it'll return this blank. Well, not bank. It's going to be a dictionary with just the user ID in it, and then we can modify it on a form, and then we'll have to go through it and put a save method in, right? I usually do this too because user profile, we know what it is. I usually do a get and a set function, like a get and a save, and then I'll usually say that this is a well, we'll write that next time because it is getting late here and it's 11:04. My wife's gonna kill me if I don't get to bed soon here. All right, guys, I actually am probably going to blaze 2 here. I think we've got enough here. I'm going to check this code in, so if anybody wants to check it out. So let's see here, git status. Forgot to make a branch. That's probably not a good thing whatsoever. Oh, jeez, oh, Pete's. Aaron, what are you doing here? Git checkout dash branch. Let's call this navigation setup. Git status. All right, let's see here. Let's cheat. Let's just use fork. I have fork on here, right? I got fork on here. I'll just use fork to commit all these files. So let's see here. What is there we go. Local changes. Let's just commit all these. So let's just go through here. This all looks good. And now that I have it staged, I use GPG for checking code. So I can't just simply check it in with fork. Fork doesn't know about GPG. So I have to do a commit message from the command line. I'm using Starship here. If you're not using that, check it out. That's how I get the little tree icon that tells me what branch I'm in. It'll tell me like how many commits, how many files I have. That's the 17 counter. It tells me like how forward and behind I am on a branch. I'll show you another cool thing about Starship in a second here. Once I check this in, commit, added views for navigation, for generic navigation, we'll say. Now it's going to ask me for GPG key. And that should encrypt my check-in when I go and push it. Git push. Yes. Warp is awesome. If you're not using that, use that because it saves so much problems. But if I go into source, watch this. And let me go into views, for example. Notice the little bird icon here with 5.9. What it's telling me is it's telling me the version of Swift that this code's using. It's that cool. That's a cool trick, quite honestly. It's a like not necessarily useful for Swift developers. Let's just be honest, right? We know what version of Swift we have on our computer. We probably don't care. But for Node.js developers, and you have a bunch of React crap on your computer, and then you have like 5 different projects your team's working on, and they're all different versions of Node and stuff. Oh boy, is this a great sense, because I don't remember, and I usually will have 3 versions of Node on my computer, and then I basically have to symlink it out to like, oh okay, Brew's got Node at 18 for Node 18, and some stuff's on 20, and then you got one old project, 2 projects on 16 that you can't get off for whatever reason, and you keep telling the people, hey, we got to upgrade. 16 is getting kind of old, but they don't listen. Having this kind of thing. So Starship does this. Starship has a bunch of built-in things where it knows different languages. It knows like Ruby, Rust. It knows Swift. It knows Node, obviously. The list is pretty long. Java, and it'll go through and look at your code and actually figure out like what your version you're using, or it'll look at the compiler version based on what you have set, like your package JSON, et cetera, and it can then tell you what version you're using. And like I said, for Swift, not that useful. I'll be honest with you, right? But for Node developers, oh boy, or React developers, that thing is that's a lifesaver sometimes. If you're trying to figure out like, why does this work? Oh crap, I'm using the wrong version of Node. Can't tell you how many times I've had like unit tests fail. Like I'm running the tests, and it's like, man, these things don't work. And it's like, oh shoot, Brew updated Node didn't it. And I know for a fact that we only work on 18 like 3 or whatever it is, or some weird version of Node. And if you update, all the tests break because the JavaScript library hasn't been updated. The life of JavaScript developers, it's not great. These are all the pains that you have that you don't have to deal with on mobile when you use Swift. That's why I always say mobile development's way easier than anything else. Yeah. I think we got good code here. We're checked in. I think what's going to happen on Thursday is we're going to go through and get that user profile stuff working. We'll be able to set and get a user. We're going to add a couple properties are in there, but I'm going to wait for the next year to do that because we want to save the user's image into the database, which you absolutely can do as an attachment. It's actually pretty cool. It's something that you can't easily do in SQLite. Usually you'd have to like take that document and try to turn it out into bits and then stream it into the database, and that's really slow. We use something called Fleece. That's our technology of how we save documents, JSON documents, to a database, and Fleece does it real time. It's super fast, faster than anything you'll ever need, at least on iOS and Android. Once again, if you're on a really cheap Android phone and you have like a SD card and it's a really slow SD card, you may have some performance problems if you're trying to save really large images. But most of the time, most modern phones, you're not going to see the performance problems with it. So on Thursday, we'll go through and get a user profile. We'll save that to the database. We'll be able to sync that back up to servers and stuff. We'll get like what department you're in and stuff, and then we'll get real authentication working. We'll actually get where, hey, we need to check some real users. We'll get your profile. We'll be able to see your picture if you log out. If you log in as somebody else, we'll be able to see their picture and all that kind of stuff. We'll do all that jazz on Thursday, and then we'll start to build the actual expense report stuff. Yeah, sure, I could do that. I didn't realize he's actually streaming right now. Let me go check. Oh yeah, look. Oh yeah, I have here. He is streaming right now. Yeah, give me a second here. Let me rate him and get him if the chat's ever going to raid. All right, folks, I'm going to raid one of our fellow developers here, and I'm going to jump on his stream. Yeah, thanks everybody. Yeah, it was awesome. I'm going to jump onto his stream real quick here. We'll go chat over there. I'm going to click the raid now button. We're going to go over there.